All right, so I'm going to pretty much, go back over much of those things, if not all. Um, and so everyone else who's done their homework, you can just follow along and see where you align and see if there's something that's that you missed or that I missed or that we all missed. So that said, I'm going to jump back into the discipleship course and uh, stop push record. Okay, and so this is going to be lesson 5. All right, and lesson 5 is centered around the story of Yaakov. And the homework assignment was that you present the bare bones, and the bare bones that we were looking to have presented was to first entitle it, and there was only one rule. There's only one rule for entitling, you know, um, for the bare bones entitlement, and that is that you must utilize scriptural expressions, you know, within your title. So whatever wording you use in your title has to be found in scripture. For example, Sister Asif, uh, the title of hers was "What You Reap What You Sow," or something to that. Yeah, and so sowing is in the word, reaping is in the word. So that works. Okay, all right, and then we were to consider the characters, identify of the number of characters that's in the story, and define their names. And so that's what we was looking for, and then identify the main characters. Point out the main characters, identify the setting of the story, and then we were to identify and consider the plot of the story. And lastly, you go through the story and point out any conflicts and conflict resolutions. All right.
Yeah.
So that was the assignment. That will be the assignment. Also for the subsequent homework assignments. When I ask for bare bones, this is what I'm looking for. All right. So that said, let's start this. All right. So the first thing that we were to do was entitle the story. Now, actually, my title was very similar to I had the same line of thinking that Sister Asa did, but I entitled mine "Beguile Begets Beguile."
Yep.
And so that's what I entitled it: "Beguile Begets Beguile," because that's exactly what I see transpiring within the story. Beguiling, just begetting more beguiling. All right, the characters of the story um, I found to be Yitzhak or Isaac, who meant laughter or mockery. Rebecca, name means ensnarer. Esau, red. Jacob, supplanter. Yahuwah, people of the east, and which can speaks to east represents the first light, so it could be people of the first light. Rachel, meaning you or sheep. Laban, white. Leah, weak or tired, and she just so happened to have tired eyes or lazy eye. Uh, there are 9 characters in all. There were 9 characters, 6 male and 3 female. And a character trait that stand out in the story is deception or beguile. All right, we have some main characters, and the main characters are found to be Isaac and Rebecca. Also, Jacob and Esau. Found Yahuwah to be a main character. Laban was also a main character. Laban, in addition to Leah. So these were our main characters. The setting of the story. The story takes place in diverse locations, i.e., Isaac's home, which was in Beersheba. Also Bethel, where Yaakov receives his dream. Which was formerly named Luz, which means almond tree. Um, at a well in the land of the east, where was kind of the entry into the area of Haran. And lastly, in Haran, which speaks to a mountaineer at Laban's estate. Points of interest: Yaakov leaves one well only to arrive at another. But why are we told this, and what does it mean? Selah. Okay. Concerning the plot, let's see. The plot of the story is centered about deception or beguiling. It begins with Yaakov obtaining his father's blessing via deception, which in turn leads to Yaakov obtaining his first wife and children as the result of deception. It's the result of deception perpetrated against him by Laban, his father-in-law, who, by the way, acquired his wealth via the deception of Yaakov, his son-in-law. Hence, I entitled the story, beguiling, beguile begets beguile. Points of interest: why did Yah honor Isaac's blessing upon Yaakov, knowing that it was obtained through deception? Or did he honor it? Selah. We also have some conflicts. And along with conflicts, we had some resolutions. So, my first conflict I have is Yaakov versus Rebecca. Now, there's a bit of conflict betwixt Rebecca and Yaakov when she instructs him to pretend to his father Isaac to be his brother Esau, especially seeing that his skin was smooth, whereas his brother Esau's was hairy. And so there was a little conflict there. He had a problem with that. Now, this conflict was resolved by Rebecca declaring that she'll take the curse in his stead, if he were to be cursed, and by disguising her son, Yaakov, with the use of goat or kid skins, along with dressing him in some of his brother's raiment. And had another conflict with Yaakov versus Isaac. Now, there's a slight conflict with Yaakov and Isaac due to Yitzhak's disbelief that Yaakov is in fact Esau. You know, he didn't quite believe that. You know, now this conflict is resolved by Yaakov allowing Yitzhak to touch the goat hair that he had on him and to smell him, which ultimately won his trust. You know, but Yitzhak wasn't fooled right off the bat. You know, he recognized Yaakov's voice. You know, but he was convinced, you know, by the hair. Right? You know, he couldn't have grown hair overnight. It must be Esau. And and I found another conflict that centered around Yaakov stealing Esau's blessing. You know, as you know, would be expected. There's also a conflict between Yaakov and his brother Esau that emerges due to Yaakov stealing his brother Esau's blessing. And Esau's plotting to get revenge by killing his brother Yaakov. Now, this conflict is resolved by their mother Rebecca convincing their father Isaac that Yaakov should go away to obtain a wife from her brother's daughters, which will give Yaakov's brother Esau's anger an opportunity to subside. You know, in that way, you know, nobody get hurt. You know, and of course the plot worked. You know, but a point of interest is why did Esau think he was about to die? And I found myself pondering this, you know, and this is just supposition on my part, and it doesn't really, you know, amount to much, you know, but I calculated that Esau would have had to been about 100 years old, and he may have had some inhibitions or some, you know, some thoughts about, you know, maybe he's going to die at 100, seeing that he was born when his father was 100. You know, and you know, I just found that to be a coincidence that just kind of sticks out. You know, not to say that that's the case. You know, it's just was something interesting to ponder. You know, seeing that the man didn't die until, you know, several years later. You know, he was still a young man. You know, practically. You know, well, middle aged. You know, for the length of time that he lived. You know, so now that could totally not be the case. He could have just been so sick he felt like he was gonna die. You know, nevertheless, you know, it was around when he was 100 years old, and you know, and that just kind of rung a bell with me. It's like, okay, well, he was around 100. I could see him having some inhibitions or you know, some fears about turning 100. You know, saying that he was born when his dad was 100. You know, uh, but yeah, just something I was fine. All right, seeing another conflict betwixt Yaakov versus Laban. Now, there's a point of conflict betwixt Yaakov and his uncle Laban that arises over Laban's beguiling Yaakov concerning um, beguiling Yaakov by sending Leah in place of Rachel. You know, after he had served for 7 years for Rachel. You know, and beguiled him into actually serving another 7 years of labor, you know, for Rachel, whom he truly wanted. You know, he tricked him by sending Leah in the place of Rachel, that he could get another 7 years of labor out of Yaakov. You know, and we later find out, you know, the motivation behind this because he admittedly said that he learned that he was blessed because of Yaakov. You know, so he didn't want to see his blessing leave. So he figured, you know, hey, I better extend this guy's stay a while. How can I do it? And so we see what he did. Now this conflict was resolved by Laban also giving Yaakov Rachel to wife during that time in exchange for his promise to serve him yet another 7 years. So he still got what he wanted, but he was on the hook to serve another 7 years. So that was kind of crafty by Laban. But as I entitled it, Beguile begets beguile.
Yep.
You know, yeah. This is what he did. To acquire the blessing, and he ended up getting beguiled himself. You know, and also there's a point of conflict with Leah versus Yaakov and Rachel. Now, there's an implied conflict that arose betwixt Leah and Yaakov and Rachel due to Laban's beguiling. This conflict caused Leah to become hated, afflicted, and detached from her husband. And it's very easy to see, because not, yes, Yaakov was deceived, and Yaakov did not know that that was Leah in the tent, but Leah knew that it was Leah in the tent.
Yeah.
And she didn't say anything, and and I'm sure she hid behind what Dad told me not to say nothing, but yeah, so yeah, beguile begets beguile. There's a whole lot of beguiling going on up in this story, and so for Leah's part that she played, she found herself actually being hated, afflicted, and detached from her husband. And hey, it makes sense, and when you think about it, because you think back and you're like, okay, well, look at what was happening to Yaakov, because he partook in the deception of his mom. His mom sought out to deceive her husband, Esau, so that Yaakov would get the blessing. And Yaakov partook. He knew he wasn't Esau. Just like Leah knew she wasn't Rachel. Say lie. Poetic justice, right? That's why I always say, no one gets away with anything. You can think you're getting away, and to everybody else, it may look like you got away. But yeah, he sees all, and he will make it right. And that's what we see here. And so at the end of the day, Leah did get her husband. She got her man, but she also became hated, afflicted, and detached from him, in a way. Now this conflict was only partially resolved by Yah opening Leah's womb, yet closing Rachel's, thereby causing Rachel to become barren. And when we think about this, you can just about picture this scenario in your head, knowing what transpired. You could just imagine how infuriated Rachel was, as well as Yaakov. Here it is. He worked 7 years. Not 7 weeks, not 7 months, 7 years. That's love right there.
Right.
Because a lot of guys, they won't work won't give up 7 weeks pay, to marry today, let alone 7 months. 7 years, forget about it. And there'll be a lot of single folks out here, You wait a minute. You say I gotta work 7 years before we can get married, and I gotta give all the money to your dad. Yeah, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to do that. But after all that was done, you know, only to get the wrong sister. You know what I'm saying? You can imagine how Rachel felt. You know, she was infuriated, and so when she was allowed to be with Yaakov, you can imagine how the two of them, they probably treated Leah real bad because she didn't say anything and she kept quiet as her dad asked her to. You know, but you can probably imagine they probably treated her pretty bold, and Yah didn't like it. Yah didn't like it, especially since Yaakov, he was treating her bad. If he was treating her bad, I'm not gonna throw him under the bus. This is just speculation, but if he was treating her bad, then he was being a hypocrite. Yeah, because he had done the same thing. Right. And Rachel, she could have, she had grounds to be upset, but she could have went overboard, and so y'all decided to teach them both a lesson. But very interesting story, very, very interesting story, unique plot, that really shows us that we don't get away with anything in this life. You do something, you think no one sees it, Yah always sees. Yeah. Right. And that's why, I coined the phrase a long time ago. Whenever I leave out the door, I ask myself, hey, what is Yah gonna catch me doing today? And perfectly the answer is nada. Nothing. Not a thing. That's all I have for you today. Pray it was a blessing.
Hallelujah.